So let's see just how well the enemy warlord can command once we run a black sword through him 2 or 3 times. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel, where today I thought we'd take a focused look at one of the new Black Templar miniatures, with a review of the datasheet for the Emperor's Champion, just how much damage this ultimate duelist can do, and talking a little bit about getting more out of him and how I think about using him in game. I'll be aiming to get some mini reviews like this done for the rest of the Black Templar's new miniatures, so feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more. I've already made a video reviewing the new codex. In the lore, the Emperor's Champion is an honour bestowed to one of the Black Templars on the eve of battle. Often one sword brother will be struck with great visions of a great crusade across the galaxy, dispatching heretics and Xenos in their wake. The chaplains bestow upon this brother the relics of the Emperor's Champion, including the mighty black sword, and their solemn oath in battle is to seek out the enemy's commanders and lay them low for the glory of the Emperor, or be martyred in the attempt. In-game, the Emperor's Champion is an HQ choice for the new Black Templars Codex, 100 points or power level 5, up from 80 points in the previous edition, though now of course his stats have become a little bit beefier as he's been upgraded to a Primaris model. For your 100 points you basically get an incredibly fighty duelist character, a movement of 6, weapon skill of 2+, strength and toughness 4, and 5 wounds and 5 attacks. As characters go as well, he's fairly hard to take down. He does have a 2+ armor save from his Artificer armor and a 4+ invul. The mighty black sword lives up to the legend pretty well. It's got 2 different attack profiles depending on whether you're fighting lighter foes or heavier ones. Sweep gives him strength +3, AP -3 and damage 2, a very nice generalist profile at strength 7 there. And thrust gives him strength ×2, so strength 8, AP -4, flat damage 3, but a -1 to hit. Depending on the target, the damage output of either could be really quite close. As a general rule though, I think lighter infantry you're better off with sweep, and generally if your targets have 3 or more wounds, you're usually going to be better off with the thrust. We'll get onto the damage output for both of those in a minute, but in addition to that he also has the standard bolt pistol and frag and crack grenades. In addition to this, he does have a fair few other special rules. He's -1 to hit in melee, so can be a little bit more durable there, and then has a few very helpful rules for helping fight characters in combat. He both rerolls hits and wounds against enemy characters, meaning that you're usually going to be better off with thrust mode, as that -1 accuracy really doesn't matter all that much when you get 4 rerolls to hit. He also fights first against characters, which can be pretty handy if he's heroically intervened into them, which you will find fairly easy to do, as he does have a 6-inch heroic intervention, and instead of just going towards the closest model, he can elect to go towards the nearest character model if he chooses, provided he can manage to get in engagement range. In general, this guy's pretty decent as an all-round combatant, but he's just so much better if he can get into combat with characters. Finally, as a downside though, he can't take any relics, and he can only take warlord traits from the Black Templars table. Personally, I find this really quite a hefty downside. I'd say one of the biggest advantages of characters is being able to choose flexibly which relic and warlord trait to bear into battle, but as the Emperor's Champion basically counts as a special character in a way, you are kind of locked out of the vast majority of options. I guess it is quite nice to have the flexibility out of the Black Templar warlord trait table, though I'll admit, as I have said in previous videos, I don't really think that the warlord trait table is that great out of the new codex. I guess maybe Frontline Commander could help getting towards his prey a little bit easier with some boosted charges, or I guess just an extra Deny the Witch doesn't really hurt. In general though, this guy just isn't any sort of commander. He's typically not going to be buffing the troops around him in any meaningful way. He's just very much a fighty pop-up melee character who's going to be particularly good at taking down enemy characters that get too close. So how good is he at killing his prey then? In general, he really wants to be seeking out heavy infantry, not just light troops. On average, that black sword will lay low around about 4 dead guardsmen or 3 dead space marines on average, so it's going to be much more valuable to seek out the heavy infantry. Against heavy hitters, he's no slouch either. Against a standard toughness 7 vehicle with no invul, he'll on average deal 8 wounds per round. That will drop off pretty heavily though if the vehicle does have any sort of invul save, as it makes the -4 AP of thrust mode not quite so good. So he does pretty decent damage against whatever he does get into, but he really comes into his own against enemy characters, as you might expect from all the special rules. You basically always want to be using the thrust mode with the 4 reroll hits that he gets, and here's roughly how much damage he'd do on average to each one of these targets. Around about 10 wounds to a Skitarii Marshal, about 8 wounds to a Space Marine Captain, 7 wounds to a Custodes Shield Captain, 9 wounds to a Demon Prince, or if he is trying to punch above his weight, 7 wounds to Magnus the Red. That would go down to more like 5 wounds though, after you've taken into account his warlord trait if he has it. Basically though, the stats of that black sword and those rerolls give him a very good chance of taking out any character that he gets in combat with, provided it isn't enormously survivable, something like a demon primarch or a faction commander. In terms of trying to get a bit more out of him, there's a few different buffs and synergies that can be used with the Emperor's Champion. Some of the Templar vows are quite good, a boosted movement turn 1 is certainly helpful for a foot character, or a bit more damage in combat either with All Game Assault Doctrine or the 6s to hit auto wound thing. As we mentioned, he could pick up one of the Black Templar Warlord traits, maybe the Deny the Witch one, but also he could be fighting first against everything and +1 attack, +1 to advance and charge from Frontline Commander, or maybe even the +1 strength and mortal wound impact hits one. Boosting him up to strength 9 could make him very efficient against toughness 8 things. I feel like the Warlord traits are maybe a bit take or leave though. You might be better off giving that to a standard Marshal or Chaplain, someone who's got a bit more choice. Otherwise, theoretically to get a bit more out of his combat, you could get +1 to wound from a Chaplain litany, though I think this might generally be better on your bigger squads rather than a character. You could give him a 5+ Feel No Pain from the Divine Protection litany, but again probably better on squads, or have other sources of healing from apothecaries, or rerolls to hit from Hellwrecked if you're not fighting characters. Transport wise, I think he could be one of the better choices to put in an Impulsor. He's a fairly dangerous character that wants to be getting to the front line as soon as possible, and putting him next to a squad of Blade Guard could make them a more tricky prospect to assault, as it'd have a fairly good chance of being able to heroic intervene into anything that was charging them, with that very very long heroic intervention range. Probably the single highest value though is being able to use transhuman physiology whenever he's attacked by something strength 8 or higher. Going from being wounded on 2s to wounded on 4s is no small thing, and might allow him to survive to fight. 2 CP to fight in death if he's slain in melee could also be a very good investment, and I think that some of the Templar ones could come in handy for him as well, perhaps using Devout Push to get within range of an enemy character, or Tenacious Assault to pin an enemy unit in melee that really doesn't want to be there with very angry Space Marine. So to sum up, let's talk about using an Emperor's Champion in game. I think as a footborn character, he's typically going to want to be fairly front and central in your deployment zone, advancing up the board behind something durable, maybe some big Crusader squads or squads of Blade Guard veterans. He's going to be okay against elite infantry and heavies, having fairly decent damage for the points, but in reality he really wants to be seeking out enemy characters at any opportunity whatsoever. For most normal sized HQs, the Emperor's Champion is going to have a really good chance of killing them in a single round of combat. It's maybe quite nice that he feels just a little bit more disposable than some of the other buffing HQs. Things like Chaplains or Marshals you might want to keep alive at all costs, but the Emperor's Champion, just being a combat machine, can maybe afford to be a bit more brave and just throw himself right into the throat of the enemy army, trying to bring down a big prize. Overall, I'd sum him up in terms of strengths and weaknesses that he's an excellent anti-character damage dealer, though quite good at anti-elite infantry and anti-heavy. He's reasonably tough for his cost with a 2+ save and 4+ info, and he's a really good fluffy choice for a Black Templar army. I certainly think he'd be a really fun model to use in game. On the downside though, you don't get any buffing auras, and he's locked out of taking many useful Warlord traits and some of the really good Black Templar relics. Being fairly slow moving infantry doesn't really help him out much either. It'd be so much easier to catch characters in combat if he was moving something like 12 inches, but to an extent if the opponent really doesn't want a character in combat with him, they're usually going to be able to prevent that. In general, I feel like this is probably going to add up to the Emperor's Champion not being taken quite so much as in competitive games. Personally, I feel if you were building an HQ choice for an army, I'd much rather have a Captain or Chaplain instead. Both of those can still be very fighty indeed, even if maybe not quite as fighty as this guy, but they can move around the board much faster with the right upgrades, and still be pretty decent combat threats, while also putting out some really powerful buffs for your own army, and bearing some of the excellent Black Templar relics, things like the Crusader Helm or Tannhauser's Bones. I don't really think that you're handicapping your army all that much by taking one along though, it just feels maybe a little bit less essential than some of the other choices. Unless you're going incredibly character heavy, you might well have to weigh him up against other really good choices like Hellwrecked and Grimaldus. Overall, I'd suspect that he isn't going to appear that much in the most competitive Black Templar lists, but I'm very happy to be wrong if people manage to make him work. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. How good is the Emperor's Champion, and are you looking forward to running through some heretics with the Black Sword? If you've enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, including plenty of new ones for the Black Templars over the next few weeks. I usually tend to produce 40k videos just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page, which you can find down in the video description below. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some really big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, then the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.